Hi everyone, कैसे हो? Welcome to this next episode of a story of nearly everything. हम लोग यहाँ पर कोशिश करते हैं कि कैसे किसी एक अच्छी बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट थीम को उठाएंगे and we will try and narrate and build a story around it and tell you the entire chronological detail and regional understanding of that theme. This is somewhere what we aim to do here, right? Now, as we proceed, something which is in news a lot these days is Afghanistan, right? So, that is something which we need to look at. Don't you feel so? Now, the moment we had that thought that, we need to look at history of Afghanistan and try and see what are those wonderful nuggets which we can share with you. So while undertaking that exercise, one thing which comes out very, very categorically, जानते हो क्या चीज एक सामने आती है? वो ये आती है बेटा कि अपने दिमाग से take out all those misconceptions from your head that Afghanistan is a very far off, far away foreign land. It is not. The amount of history which this region has had with the subcontinent. A lot of scholars believe that Afghanistan is a part of the subcontinent itself. It is simply a creation of last 70 years when these modern national boundaries have emerged. And because, history is somewhere, history is all about perspectives, isn't it? And this is something, when we, became a nation, once we became a nation, the state, the governments, they wanted to build a specific identity of modern Indians. Hence, a specific collection of facts were highlighted as our history. In this process, unfortunately, we lost a lot of valuable correlations with Bangladesh, with Afghanistan, with Pakistan, with Sri Lanka, with Nepal. A lot of this was lost. Because now when we use India, we somehow have that curtailed idea. So first thing which I would like to tell you here is, कि बच्चों, once we are looking at Afghanistan's history, you need to look at it as a part of India. The second understanding which I would, like to highlight here right at the start is Afghanistan's history can be classified under two broad headings for our purpose, right? For our purpose, we are going to categorize Afghanistan's history into two categories. Afghanistan's history. We are going to divide into two categories. First is going to be pre-Islamic, and second is going to be Islamic. During both these times, this region's history will be correlated to the wider happenings which are going on in the subcontinent and in Iran and in Central Asia. If you look at our, the history of these two regions, the linkages, right, they occur right from the Harappan age. And once we realized it, we decided to do one thing. We decided to break down this class into two parts. Right? We decided to break down this class into two parts. The first part it will deal with the with those aspects of Afghanistan's history which happened before the entry of Islam. We have talked about the entry of Islam. We have spoken about it. I would recommend that you go and have a small, quick look at that video where we, discuss and try to find out how, the Prophet and the four Rashidu caliphs, they managed to spread the Islamic empire, right? And then their history moves to the next phase, where Islam plays a very important role. And finally, the Britishers also come in. Durand Line is finalized. Right? We hear of Anglo-Afghan wars, the Panjadeh incident. There are so many things which we need to discuss here. They become very important for us to make a sense of what is happening now. Keeping this in mind, let's begin our journey. In this class, I am going to focus upon right from the earliest times till around 650, 670 CE. Right? And in the next class, we will take back our journey. We will begin our journey once more. And from 670 CE, we will move onwards. और हम लोग देखेंगे कि कैसे Safavids and the Mughals and the Central Asian Khanates, right? They all got involved into this entire fascinating geography. If you look at it, this region was more like a boundary between Iran and India. A lot of tribal population was here. The terrain is rugged. The modern nation of Afghanistan is a creation of 1880. 1880 second Anglo-Afghan war, uske baad ye bana hai. Right? So, and then of course, how the, Russians, they enter into the picture in 1979, Cold War ke time par. We need to understand that. And we need to also look at how Taliban originated and reached the kind of proportion which we witness as of now. So we have a huge, beautiful storybook in front of us. Right? And the best part about it is that it almost parallels India's history, phase by phase, you will notice. So it should not be a very complicated story. I agree, geography is totally different. Ethnically, the people are different. Language, the people are different. But there is still, few aspects which really unite them very beautifully. Okay? So our objective will be to keep highlighting. Remember, we are looking at it as an Indian. Right? So of course, you can expect that my talks will focus more on the regions of north and eastern and southern Afghanistan rather than western Afghanistan, which was having borders with Iran, Khorasan as it was known then. Chalo, baat ko badha raha hoon aage. Let's have a look at the political boundaries before we start talking. Let's have a look at political boundaries as they exist today. This right here is your Afghanistan. It shares borders with Iran, Pakistan, the Kashmir region, which is of course, controversial, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, this is Uzbekistan, Iran, and right here, there's a small, narrow piece of land, right, which belonged to the Jammu Kashmir kingdom. It is currently under control of Pakistan. As per the accession treaty, which India signed post-independence, that area should have been with India. But a lot of people rejected that agreement. We will look at that story some other time. Okay, move on. ये बेटे फिजिकल फीचर्स है एरिया का, ये देखना, आई हैव रियलाइज्ड कि बच्चे से जैसे उम्र जा रही है कि ज्योग्राफी जानना बहुत जरूरी है. Initially, when I started teaching, I would, probably not stress that much. But now I have started stressing on two components: geography and answer writing. अगर history तुम्हें अपनी improve करनी है, those are the two areas which you really need to focus upon. A lot of people can know this, but not many people can write it properly. Right? और वो writing efficiently तभी आती है जब आप practice करते हैं. Start looking at the last year's questions. Right? Okay, proceeding onwards. This region, Afghanistan, do you see the terrain? Right? Very hilly terrain. This is a Hindu Kush, isn't it? This is a Hindu Kush range. This is your Suleiman. This is Kirtha. This is Pamirs. And the other ranges as well, Tinshan and all, Himalayas. Right? So this region somewhere was historically considered as Afghanistan. Right? Okay. This has also been, by modern scholars, they refer to Afghanistan as a kind of a Central Asian roundabout, Choraha. There were so many trade routes coming and going, crisscrossing through Afghanistan. Indus Valley se yahan pass routes the. If you recall, we have in the other series in Nakshebaazi talked about it, where we are saying about the Harappan trade. I would recommend again that you go and have a look at it. देखो हिस्ट्री में बहुत सारे चीजें बच्चे कनेक्टेड हैं, राइट? सो इसीलिए थोड़ा सा अगर वो सारी चीजें, बिकॉज मैं एक अध्यापक हूं तो मैं अज्यूम कर लेता हूं कि मैंने वो वीडियो बना दिया है तो मेरे बच्चों ने देखा है. सो आई एम सॉरी, राइट, बट आई स्टार्ट अज्यूमिंग दैट यू हैव सीन इट, राइट? सो जैसा मैं तुम्हें बता रहा था कि yes, so there were a lot of trade routes here. Silk route जो था, Silk route was running from China to Mediterranean. That was also very close to Afghanistan. Okay, then far east was connected to Afghanistan via the Tarim Basin. Eurasian steppes जो यहाँ पर हैं, ऐसे ऐसे करके, those steppes, they were fairly accessible from here. So a lot of trade routes and migration routes, crisscrossed this region. Okay, fair point. So, in fact, during the Harappan times, we hear of two sites. Right? One is Shorthugai. It is considered as the northernmost trading outpost of Harappans. It is present in the Bactra region. That is absolutely North Afghanistan. वो जो टिप है ना, जो देख रहे थे हम लोग, जो पतली सी स्ट्रिप है, सॉरी, वहां पे है. That is called as Bactra. Right? So, this is the place where they got their, lapis lazuli from. Think about it, right? So, as I was telling you, their history, if you want to understand them clearly in brief, then probably best way is to categorize it, right? अपने answers में भी categories डालेंगे हम, right? So, if you want, this is one way in which you can easily understand it. So right from the olden days, I will start off from around 3000 BCE and take you till 670 CE in this video. Beyond that will be covered in the next video. So if you look at the pre-Islamic history, of course it was mostly rural and all, nomadic and all. But yes, we noticed there were signs of urbanization as early as the 3000 BCE. Case in point is Mundigak and Shorthugai, the Harappan cities. Also on the western side, we hear of some cities emerging as well. Right? They were very close to Mesopotamia. The western side, must have been closer. A city called as Balkh or Bactra. Right? These terms will be handy for us. Right? A city called as Balkh or Bactra. कभी पढ़ा है? Greco-Bactrian, Indo-Bactrian. You will be amazed the way, political developments here were linked. Right? So, this city called Bactra was established somewhere around 2000 BCE. Right? Goes on till 2000 BCE. When we look at our Buddhist resources, right? When we look at our Buddhist resources, Pali resources, so the point is, when we look at those, sources, we find that mention of those 16 Mahajanpads, right? And there are some brief locations, their capitals, all that is known to us, right? There are two Mahajanpads which are important for us here in the context of Afghanistan. They are Gandhara. Gandhara lied, its location was Gandhara. Gandhara was between Hindu Kush mountains and the Suleiman mountains. ये हिंदू कुश है, ये सुलेमान है, तो यहां कहीं पे तुम्हारा गांधारा रीजन था. That's how you can probably keep it in mind. Right? Gandhara did not actually extend to Afghanistan. But Gandhara, if you recall, will have a Gandhara school of art. And the greater Gandhara culture, it influenced not only this side, Mathura and all, it also, I mean, when I say this side, I mean eastern side in the Gangetic Plain. It also had a wonderful impact towards China, Central Asia. It also had a huge influence towards Hindu Kush and beyond Hindu Kush in Afghanistan. So the Gandharan, greater Gandhara culture, it had a huge influence. And a large portion of what we call now Afghanistan was influenced by it. Okay, understood? Acha. The next Mahajanpad that we need to keep in mind is Kamboj here. Kamboj were the rulers of Hindu Kush region. Gandhar के थोड़ा पीछे हिंदू कुश का जो पूरा पर्वतीय इलाका था, that entire area, it was under the Kamboj rule. Okay. All right. You remember I was talking about the greater Gandhara culture, expanding to so many regions. Notice this. This is Bamiyan. Bamiyan. देख रहे हो अफगानिस्तान के अंदर है, काफी अंदर है, central Afghanistan. This is Kabul. This is Ghazni right here. This is southern Afghanistan known as Kandahar. One point that I would like to highlight, I don't know, because I have seen a lot of people get confused here. Gandhara and Kandahar are two different entities, as far as I know, right? Gandhara is that area which I just spoke about between Hindu Kush and Suleiman Mountains. Kandahar is the South Afghanistan wala region, this one. Of course, this is a modern map, right? So this is Bamiyan. This is the Bamiyan region. Why am I talking about Bamiyan? I am talking about Bamiyan because we find at Bamiyan the Bamiyan Buddhas, right? Which had an absolutely wonderful, if you look at it, right? They show clear influence of Gupta art and Gandhara art here. This is so similar like Sarnath Buddha. Of course, they are like, 55 meters tall. There are two Buddhas actually, Western and the Eastern Buddha. And the Western one is taller, which is this one. Right? It's 55 meters high. And of course, now it doesn't exist. Our beloved Taliban, हमारे प्यारे तालिबान बंधुओं ने ये कर दिया है. अब वहां पर एक खोखला सा ये दिखता है. And sad part is a few months back I actually saw that some people out there in Afghanistan, they were actually trying to revive this. They were trying to put up a laser show using very high technology to try and project an image of Bamiyan Buddha here, the two Buddhas. It was just in news a few months back. But then all of a sudden I started reading such news that, complete havoc is back. Yeah, so sad. Isn't it? Anyway, chalo, khair. All right. This is what I meant when I said, that great Gandhara culture, it had a huge influence zone, including portions of Afghanistan. Moving on. Kamboj, this was Rajouri in your Kashmir region, near Punch. Right near that place is a place called Rajouri. Original name was Rajapuri. This was one of the capitals, may have been one of the capitals of the Kamboj. But their primary capital, their main city, heartland, was the Kapisi region in Afghanistan. Right? So Kamboj, they were kind of ruling portions of India as well as portions of Afghanistan. Now enter the Achaemenids. This is where the first historical written records of this region start appearing in front of our eyes. This is the Achaemenid Empire, right? I'm sure you guys must be aware about Darius the Great. Darius the Great, right? And he's the one who wrote the Behistun inscription, I believe. Yeah, Behistun inscription. So Darius, he established a Persian empire. He established a Persian empire, and his capital was Persepolis, and he captured not only the Persia region, but he also went on and captured the Greek islands. वो सबको भी पकड़ लिया उन्होंने जाके. He captured the entire Syria, Iran, all that land. Syria and Palestine, right? I'll show you a map. These are your Achaemenids, right? This was their empire. See, can you notice this? These are your, Aegean Sea, Ionian Sea, that region. This is Anatolia, modern day Turkey, Asia Minor, Syria, Palestine, Mesopotamia. This is Tigris, Euphrates. So they captured all this region, Georgia, Armenia, right? They managed to capture this all region, and they instituted the concept of satrapies, right? Satraps बनाए उन्होंने. देखो portions of India as well, Gandhara, captured. Entire Afghanistan region captured. From the Persian inscriptions, we can come to the inference that Arachosia, Bactria, and Arya, these are the three ancient names of the region which now comprise as Afghanistan. Right? Bactria, Arya, and Arachosia. These were the three regions. And each region will have a governor who will be known as satrap. That's the satrapy system. Okay. The next phase that we notice, this is exactly how you read about Indian history. Have you realized it? First came the Persians, then came who came after the Persians? Of course, Alexander. Same thing happens here. Alexander destroys the entire Persian Empire. Alexander emerges from Macedon. ये है Macedonia, देखो. This right here is Macedon. Right? So he emerges from here, unites all these people and comes and destroys all these cities, Susa, Persepolis, burnt them all. Right? And then in 330 BCE, he defeated the Persians once more at Battle of Gaugamela and enters Afghanistan. Right? And enters Afghanistan. And you know what he said? He said something which, if the Americans and the Russians would have heard, would have listened to, then they wouldn't have found themselves in a mess which they are finding right now. He actually said that easy to march into Afghanistan, but hard to march out of because of, a rugged terrain, and there were a lot of ferocious tribes there who were very, very militant. And the terrain was such that even the largest of the armies won't stand a chance against carefully, some of the carefully trained locals. Right? So Alexander learned his lesson and he went back, right? Of course, he went back after, after fighting with Porus, he went back. And he did create a lot of Alexandrias, a lot of cities known as Alexandrias cropped up, right? And these cities, they gradually became cultural centers. They became cultural centers, and the Greek culture was present in throughout this area, northwestern subcontinent, jo pura hai, right? That entire region was influenced by it, by the Greek influence. Olympics वाले वीडियो में इसका जिक्र आया है हल्का सा. Now, one very interesting point which I would like to highlight here is that this region, Afghanistan, it had huge cultural contacts with India. It seems right from the times of at least Buddha. Why am I saying so? According to Wayne Sang, right? Nakshebaazi mein inke upar bhi ek video hai. So according to Wayne Sang, right? According to Wayne Sang, if you look at him, you will realize that he's saying somewhere, in of course his book, he's saying that the first two lay disciples, lay matlab hota hai, bachche samajh lo, a common person like us, who will not become a monk as such. He will just simply agree to what you're saying, but he will carry on living his normal routine life as well. Grihastha jivan jeeta rahega. So the first two lay disciples of Buddha, they are identified by Huinsang as Tapussa and Bhallika. And they are supposed to be merchants from Bhallika, which is supposed to be the region of Balkh, that is Bactra, that is Afghanistan. Interesting. Very interesting, right? Isn't it? Ye dekho, this is the region of Balkh. So Tapussa and Bhallika were traveling there. They were merchants. So they were coming to Gangetic plains. Beautiful. Isn't it? And हमको बताते हैं कि क्या कहते हैं ये अफगानिस्तान को तो हम लोग को कुछ पिछले देखो ना पिछले 70-75 years में the way our texts were designed, the entire northwest, the entire wonderful Bangladesh region, all that was, we've just not told anything about it. Guptas, there's a very strong consensus among many scholars that Guptas, they originated from eastern Bengal. But sadly, we are not, ये तो मतलब ये जानते ना, ये हम लोगों को भी थोड़ा सा अपनी गलतियां स्वीकार करनी होंगी. If we really want a very enlightened citizenry, then we need to, अपने हमें छोटे छोटे वो complexes जो है ना, as a nation, we need to give them up. We need to give it up. Only then, a confident nation can emerge. Once you have given up your insecurities. Okay. All right. अच्छा हाँ, sorry, एक बात बताना तो मैं आपको भूल ही गया है. यहाँ पर ये मैप देखिए ना बच्चे. This is Mauryan Empire. And in fact, if you look at all the Ashokan edicts, you will notice that several of his edicts are, there's an edict in Kandahar, right? Northwestern region के जो edicts थे, he will use the language and script of those regions. Greek and Aramaic, Kharoshti. Interesting. This is how our history was, moving. मतलब ऐसे ही चल रहे थे साथ, right? Okay. So now, this is really interesting, right? Now comes your post-Mauryan times. And during the post-Mauryan times, I am sure if you remember, we have read that in India, initially in the northern part of India, we see a lot of foreign influx, such as Greco-Bactrians. They came in, right? Followed by the Scythians or the Indo-Shakas, right? Indo-Shakas or Indo-Scythians, we can call them anything, right? The Shakas, they came in. Followed by the Parthians from Caspian Sea. They also came in and they established small, little and large kingdoms as well in northwestern portion of the subcontinent. That means what? Afghanistan. And certain portions of India and Pakistan as well, if you look at it modern day. But हमको उनके बारे में देखो ना, NCERT में कितना पढ़ाया जाता है, इतना सा, right? Okay, so Parthians, and after them came, of course, the Grand Kushans. They all ruled significant portions of Afghanistan. They all ruled significant portions of Afghanistan, especially the southern and eastern portion, Kabul, Kandahar, and Jalalabad, that region. When you look at Greco-Bactrians, I would like to talk about Menander. जो ये मिलिंद पान्हा, जो एक बहुत फेमस किताब है, I'm sure you guys have heard of it. So this Menander, right, he ruled substantial amount of Afghanistan. Indo-Greeks are replaced by Shakas. Shakas coming from Central Asia. They're coming from Central Asia. Then Indo-Parthians came in. Their dynasty is known as Gondopharid. One point which I would like to tell you here is, there's a lot of complexity in trying to find out their precise chronology. Because looking at their names, you cannot really find out which one belongs to which dynasty. The only source that you can count for here is the coinage, numismatics. And, that is not helping us to actually come out with a chronology. It can help us to get an idea of economy, which is flourishing. But no, not the, other ideas. That is one limitation. Which we must keep in mind. So Indo-Parthians come in. And we know that the title for Indo-Parthian kings was Gondophares. Their king was known as, the title was Gondophares. And we have been informed, it is believed that Jesus Christ, when he died, in his last supper, there were 13 of his closest apostles or disciples, right? Then he was taken to the cross, and then Jesus was resurrected. And when he was resurrected, all his 12 disciples, they were immediately enthralled. And they immediately realized that this is Son of the God. But the 13th one was not convinced. He still thought that this could be a charade. And he poked his finger in the flesh of the Christ. At that point, जहां पे cross का घाव था ना, poke किया, to see whether it is same or something else. And देखो ना इनकी painting में क्या लगा? He's called as Thomas the Doubter. Right? So he initially doubted, but then he was convinced. And he is considered to be as one of the most phenomenal propagator of Christianity. He traveled, right? He traveled all the way from, Palestine region, from Jerusalem. He came to the Gondopharid court. He was also a very skilled architect and carpenter. And he made the king a chariot, established a church there. This is 52 CE. And from there, he sailed all the way to Malabar. And that is where he breathed his last. This fellow, Saint Thomas, is considered as the patron saint of Indian Christianity. Thomas, the doubter. Okay. The Kushans came into this region. As I was telling you, they conquered significant region, significant area of, what we today call as Afghanistan. Vincent Smith, इन्होंने बच्चे कनिष्क को second Ashoka कहा है, because it was Kanishk who really helped in expanding Buddhism, taking it to Afghanistan, Bamiyan, right, taking it to China, Silk Route. So it was this fellow. He sponsored Mahayana Buddhism, organized the Fourth Buddhist Council. Right? And he was controlling Afghanistan at this point of time. So this is the phase where once again Afghanistan's history was very intimately linked with the ongoing developments of the Indo-Gangetic plains. Right? Okay. So Kushans were controlling, a pretty decent amount of area here. At this stage emerges a Persian dynasty. At this stage emerges a Persian dynasty. याद रखो बच्चा, अफगानिस्तान का इतिहास इंडिया के और ईरान के इतिहास से, ईरान, I mean to say Iranian plateau and the subcontinent, Indian subcontinent, इन दोनों के इतिहास से बहुत ज्यादा लिंक्ड है. It is, correlated very, very interestingly and intimately. So the point being, कि from Iran emerges a dynasty, a Persian dynasty, Sassanian dynasty. And this Sassanian dynasty establishes this kind of looking empire. Can you believe it? This is a massive empire. The Sassanians establish it. Right? The time period will be somewhere around 250. Around 250, the Sassanians come to picture and they rule this region right till the entry of Islam. Islam is going to emerge from Arabian Peninsula and capture lands of Sassanians on the eastern side and Byzantine on the western side. So Sassanians came in and they unified Afghanistan, a lot more with the Iranian side rather than with India as during the rule of Kanishk was going on. In fact, once the rule of Kanishk started declining in 220s, 230s, the Kushan rule, not Kanishk, once the Kushan rule started declining, one of the branch of the Sassanians, they captured a lot of India as well. They were known as Kushan Shah. But ज्यादा दिन नहीं रह पाते हैं, गुप्ताज आ जाते हैं और भी डेवलपमेंट हुन आ जाते हैं. इंडिया से उनको कुशान शाह जो है, कुशान शाह कौन है? इंडो ससेनियंस. प्लीज हिस्ट्री इज कॉम्प्लिकेटेड, राइट, ध्यान रखना. तो मैं देखो फिर से रिपीट कर देता हूं ये पॉइंट जो मैंने बोला. व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू टेल यू हियर इज कि ये आपके 220s, 230s में we hear of a dynasty, Sassanian dynasty rising from Iran, and they start controlling Afghanistan. The eastern branch of Sassanians, right? One of the eastern branch of Sassanian, once they realize that the Kushans are going down, they actually enter the subcontinent and capture certain territories here and they start ruling independently. They are called as Kushan Shah. उनके भी सिक्के हमको मिले हैं. Or during this time, it was the Sassanians who were controlling this region. Okay. So Sassanians, as they were in possession of large portions of Afghanistan, but gradually as the Hun tribe, the Hun tribes, the Huns of Central Asia, they started. It is the same Hun who played a role in the entire turbulence of the Gupta times as well. The Guptas faced a massive massive troubles due to these Huna invasions. So these Huns, they also managed to displace the Sassanians from Bactria region. The Hindu Kush or Hindu Kush ke upar wala region is Bactria region, right? So they were able to displace Sassanians. The Huns came in. And the Sassanians, but the Sassanians kept on controlling the rest of the Afghanistan. Rest of the Afghanistan was in their control. Sassanians were the last pre-Islamic dynasty. They were the last pre-Islamic dynasty. This is a map. From now onwards, from the 6th century onwards, during the Middle Ages, the eastern portion of Kandahar, right? The eastern portion of Afghanistan. What do I mean to say? I mean to say Kandahar, Kabul, Ghazni, this entire region was considered the part of the subcontinent. While the rest of the Afghanistan, this region, so all this region, this is the, this region. This was this was called as Khorasan. This was called as Khorasan, and it was under the influence of Iran mostly. It was an Iranian province, Khorasan. So, during the Middle Ages, Afghanistan was broadly under two spheres of influence: India and the Iranians. Okay. I think this might be the good time to take a pause here and developments, right? These are some early developments here. So, as Islam came into the picture, Islam, emerged in the Arabian Peninsula, went out, captured Iraq, Iran, Egypt, Syria, चलते चले गए, ठीक है, North Africa, Spain. They reached Afghanistan as well. They reached Khorasan as well, right? They captured Khorasan as well. In around 670, they captured Khorasan as well. However, the Kabul region, that entire Kabul, Kandahar, Ghazni region, all that was under the Kabul Shahi rulers. And these Kabul Shahi rulers, originally, they were Buddhists. They were called as Buddhist Shahi then. But in around 870, they made a transition and they became Hindu Shahi, and they became Rajputs. They became Rajputs, और ये बन गए Hindu Shahi rulers. At this stage, Afghanistan, मतलब Iran and Afghanistan का western portion, what was going on there? You remember we have spoken about the caliphate and everything, right? We've spoken about it in one of the videos. So what happens here is, so the eastern part of the Afghanistan, right, and the Kabul Valley region, all this was under the control of the so-called Kabul Shahi rulers. That was their title, right? It was established in somewhere around 7th century, and it stayed strong. It stayed strong till around 11th century CE, right? Initially they were Buddhists, but somewhere around late 9th century, they became Hindus. They became Rajputs, right? And these Hindu Shahi rulers, they fought very bravely against the Sassanids, Sassaniid governors, Sassanian Dynasty, you can call them, right? Who were basically the Abbasi governors of Khorasan. ऐसे समझेंगे, ठीक है? So Herat was the key city of Khorasan. By mid 7th century, इस्लाम ने बच्चे वेस्ट एशिया जो था वो पूरा कॉन्कर कर लिया था. साउथ एशिया अभी बचा हुआ था. वेस्ट एशिया में दे हैड कॉन्कर्ड हेरात, अफगानिस्तान का जो रीजन जो मैं आपको बता रहा हूं, खुरासन का हिस्सा जो था. So they had conquered it all, right? But they had not gone and explored Afghanistan properly because of the entire tribal nature, the rugged nature of the place. So the Caliphate army has avoided Afghanistan and they've stayed out. And Kabul and the southern Afghanistan region, all that was, anyway out of their reach. It was under the Kabul Shahi rulers. And this is how things stood for quite some time.